You save $600 a month for 3 years without missing a single deposit. You log into your investment account on a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, expecting some kind of emotional payoff. The balance reads $22,000. Congratulations, you could almost cover a decent used car. Maybe. Meanwhile, your neighbor Marcus, the guy who's been casually mentioning the market at every backyard barbecue for the past decade, just told you his portfolio quietly added $53,000 last quarter. He wasn't even watching. He was in Costa Rica for 2 weeks with his family. The market did that for him while he was sipping something cold with an umbrella in it. You stare at your $22,000 and feel something between frustration and fury. You want to close the app and never open it again. This is the part nobody warns you about. The beginning of building wealth doesn't feel like building wealth. It feels like pouring water into a bucket with a slow leak. You're doing everything correctly, maxing your Roth IRA, buying index funds, skipping the weekend trips, making your lunch instead of buying it, and your net worth is inching forward like a glacier. Technically moving, impossible to perceive in real time. What you're experiencing isn't failure, it's physics. Think about pushing a massive boulder up a mountain, not some decorative rock from a landscaping catalog. I'm talking about a multi-ton slab of granite that doesn't care how badly you want it to move. The first 100 feet are brutal. Your legs are screaming. Your back is soaked. You look over your shoulder and realize you've covered maybe 15 feet in 45 minutes. This is you, zero to your first $100,000. It's supposed to feel impossible because right now, you are the entire engine. Every dollar of progress in your account is a dollar you personally shoved in. But here's what keeps serious people pushing through the misery. There's a specific point on that mountain, a mathematical inflection point where the slope subtly shifts. Gravity stops being your enemy and quietly becomes your ally. The boulder starts to carry its own momentum. You're still pushing, but something has changed. The thing is moving on its own. Then you reach the steeper descent, and your job isn't to push anymore. Your job is just to not get flattened. That's the snowball effect, and it doesn't show up on day one. It shows up after you've already bled for it. Let's talk about why the early years feel like financial torture, because understanding this is what separates the people who make it from the people who quit. When you're starting from zero, your investment returns are mathematically irrelevant to your emotions. You have $8,000 invested. The market has a fantastic year and climbs 10%. That's a nice dinner. That's not evidence that your money is working for you. It feels like your money is sitting in a chair watching you work and offering no help whatsoever. The honest reality is that in the early phase, roughly the first 5 to 7 years for most people, almost everything in your account got there because you manually put it there. The compounding that every financial book romanticizes is technically happening, but it's happening on such a small foundation that it's essentially invisible. You contribute $6,500 this year. The market adds $500. Your brain correctly registers, I did 93% of the work. You're not wrong, you did. This is where people bail. They watch their colleague Dana book a 2-week trip to Japan. They see their college roommate driving something new and sleek. They look at their own brokerage account, $27,000 after 4 years of discipline, and the math just doesn't feel worth it. What's the point of all this sacrifice if the number barely moves? The point is that you're building the foundation of a machine that will eventually outwork you. But foundations are underground. No one photographs them. No one throws a party when you pour concrete. The data suggests that for someone investing consistently, it takes roughly 7 to 9 years to cross the first $100,000. That's assuming steady contributions, average market performance, and the psychological fortitude to not panic sell during the inevitable crashes. 9 years. That's long enough to start a family, change careers twice, and completely forget why you began.
But $100,000 is the activation point, and it changes everything. Not in the world, but in the equation. Before that threshold, a 10% year gives you $800 if you have $8,000. After it, a 10% year gives you $10,000. That's real money appearing in your account because the market had a decent few months. You start to feel the machine breathing. Your contributions still matter, obviously, but now they're being amplified by something you're not directly controlling. Your money has started pulling its weight alongside you. The climb from $100,000 to $200,000 typically takes about 5 years, not 9. Same contributions from you, but the math has switched sides. By the time you're sitting on $400,000 or $500,000, a strong market year might add $60,000 or $70,000 to your balance. You didn't save $70,000. You saved maybe $18,000. The market did the rest. Let me say that plainly. The market, this abstract collection of businesses you own tiny fractional pieces of, earned more for you in 12 months than you could save from your actual salary. That is the crossover point. That's the moment your financial future stops being entirely dependent on your ability to show up and trade hours for dollars. People talk about financial independence like it's a fantasy reserved for tech founders or lucky crypto speculators. But the mechanics are simpler and stranger than that. Financial independence begins the moment your assets generate more than your labor. You might still choose to work, plenty of people do, but the existential dread, if I lose this job, I lose everything, starts to dissolve. Your portfolio is now a second income stream that doesn't call in sick or get laid off. So how do you get there faster? You can't shortcut compound interest. It's math, not a productivity hack, but you can optimize the inputs. The first $100,000 is roughly 80% brute force and 20% market returns. That means your only real lever is increasing the rate at which you're feeding the machine. Earn more, spend less, save the difference. There's no algorithm, no shortcut. You're just trying to grow the snowball as fast as possible before it develops its own gravity. The other lever is time, which you cannot purchase but absolutely can waste. Every year you delay starting costs you at the far end of the curve, when compounding is doing the most dramatic work. Starting at 24 versus 34 might feel like a small gap, but it can be the difference between genuine freedom at 55 and grinding until you're 72. And here's the mistake that quietly destroys momentum, the one Phil has watched ruin more wealth trajectories than any market crash. You're 6 years in, you've got $70,000 saved. You're exhausted. You've earned it, you tell yourself. You see the apartment you've always wanted. You convince yourself it's an investment in your quality of life. So you pull $25,000 out. You didn't just lose $25,000. You lost the compounded future value of that money. You lost the exponential part. And worse, you reset the psychology. You prove to yourself that the account is accessible, that it's a resource, not a vault. Once your brain makes that categorization, the seal is broken. The only rule during the push phase is simple. Don't stop pushing. You don't need brilliance. You don't need to pick the right stocks or time anything correctly. You need consistency and the patience to survive the boring, invisible years. The math doesn't care about your feelings. It will work if you let it. Once you cross $500,000 or $600,000, the game changes in ways nobody prepared you for. You stop refreshing your account every week because the swings become surreal. A rough month might erase $35,000. A good month might add $55,000. Neither number represents something you saved. That's just the market moving enormous quantities of abstract value around, and you happen to own a piece of it. Here's the strange psychological territory no one maps out. When your net worth starts fluctuating by more than your annual salary, your relationship with money gets genuinely weird. You'll have a moment, maybe while making breakfast, where you realize your portfolio dropped an amount that would have been a life emergency 3 years ago, and you feel almost nothing, because you've internalized, at a cellular level, that it's not real until you sell. Your friend Jordan will spiral over a $3,000 loss in their portfolio. You'll nod with empathy while privately sitting with the $45,000 your account dropped last Thursday. You don't mention it. Not because you're hiding it, but because it would sound insane to anyone still in the push phase. At $700,000 with an 8% year, your portfolio grows by $56,000. You contributed $20,000 from your actual job. Your money out-earned you 3 to 1. You went to work every day for 12 months, and the portfolio, just sitting there, quietly beat you. That's not arrogance. That's geometry. The curve finally bent. Now here's the trap that waits for you on the other side of that milestone, because the irony is genuinely brutal.
You spend a decade clawing towards $600,000, living below your means, driving the same car, eating at home, saying no to things that seemed harmless. Then you hit that number, and your brain sends a very convincing message. You made it. You're allowed now. So you upgrade the apartment, you finance the car you've been eyeing, you book the European trip, and your lifestyle expenses jump 35% in a single year. You went from saving $22,000 annually to barely saving $6,000. You just sat on the boulder right as it was about to roll downhill on its own. The next $300,000 would have taken 4 years at your previous rate. Now it might take 8. You didn't ruin anything, but you traded velocity for comfort, and you need to understand that trade clearly before you make it. The smarter play, and I know this sounds masochistic, is 3 more years, just 3. If you're at $700,000 and keep contributing at your current rate with reasonable market cooperation, you'll cross $1 million in under 4 years. Once you're in $1 million, the math becomes almost offensive. A 10% year is $100,000. You could stop contributing entirely, leave it alone for 20 years, and retire with roughly $5.5 million, assuming 7% average growth. The gap between $700,000 and $1.2 million isn't just $500,000, it's the difference between I'm doing well and I'm actually free. That gap closes faster than you think, but only if you don't ease off the accelerator. Let's look at what the finish line actually feels like, because here's where it gets real. You're 52, you have $1.5 million, you've been at this for 26 years. The math says you're done. A 4% withdrawal rate gives you $60,000 a year, inflation adjusted, essentially forever. If you can live on that, you don't have to work another day in your life. But most people don't pull the trigger. They keep showing up, not because they need the money, but because they've spent 3 decades tying their identity to their productivity. Retirement doesn't feel like freedom, it feels like erasing yourself. The portfolio isn't the constraint anymore, psychology is, and no amount of compounding fixes that. Here's what Phil wants you to take away from all of this. The people who actually build lasting wealth aren't the ones obsessed with checking the scoreboard. They're the ones who got focused on building a life they genuinely wanted to live, and the portfolio just accumulated in the background. They automated everything, they contributed consistently, they ignored the noise, they didn't touch the snowball. And while you're grinding through the invisible years, while you're somewhere between broke and free, start building the life you'd want to live full-time when no one's paying you to do anything, because the portfolio will get there. The math is relentless. It doesn't require your motivation or your inspiration or your attention. But if you arrive at financial independence and discover you have no relationships, no curiosity, no purpose outside a spreadsheet, you didn't win. You traded one kind of prison for a quieter one. The goal was never the number. The goal was a life where the number stops mattering because you built something worth living with or without it. That's when you're actually free. Nobody is going to throw you a party when you hit $100,000. There's no trophy, no certificate. You'll log in on some random Wednesday, see 6 figures, and probably feel strangely calm. Because you built a system that doesn't require your enthusiasm to function. It just works whether you're watching or not. The snowball rolled, you barely noticed, and that, more than any number, is the whole point. Phil, for everyone still in the push phase,